Hey y'all doing peeps, Cal here from World Success. On this video, I want to give you a bit of a deep dive. I'm going to go behind the scenes in our business as we've expanded now to a couple of different countries around the world. And I want to give you a bit of an insight in the good, the bad, the ugly, and the awkward, if you will, of running a global business. What does that really look like? Should you want to do it? And if you do want to do it, what you should be prepared for, and the lessons that we've learned over the last sort of 8 years of expanding our business around the world. So Jade, our videographer extraordinaire, podcast host, and all-round just badass, has put together a couple of questions for me, and we're going to just really unpack what it means to run a global business. So if you're interested in coaching, consulting, speaking, becoming an author or a thought leader in your world, or just are even interested to learn what it really takes to run a big business, then we want to give you those insights as well. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned.
So what made you to... Let me start again.
What made you to?
What made you to? What made
God.
you to
God
initially...
spoke to me like Kanye and said, you
Seriously.
should lead the free world. And I thought, okay, let's do it one scholarship at a time.
What made you initially decide to start expanding globally?
Great question. So what made me start expanding globally really started at the very beginning. You know, I've always had a global mindset. I've always wanted to do big things. I've got, growth is one of my highest values. So it's only natural that we would start to play a bigger game. So, to give you the backstory, when we very first started, I was just in Perth, Western Australia. Then we expanded to Melbourne. Then we went to Brisbane and Sydney. Then eventually we moved and we started doing some work over in Auckland and New Zealand. And then we expanded to Wellington. But while this was happening, I also had the opportunity as well to do some high-end business mentoring where I got to travel. And I was part of another mastermind where I was actually a keynote speaker on peak performance and mindset, but then I also ran my own. And we would pick random destinations around the world. And so we've done retreats and seminars in Bali a couple of times, Phuket in Thailand. We've done work in Hong Kong a couple of times, New Zealand quite a few times in Queenstown. We've done Hawaii. We've done like Australasia, like Port Douglas, those types of areas, Melbourne, of course. They're probably the common ones that come to me. But then I've also attended events in Cabo San Lucas in Mexico, in London. We've done events as well in Portugal. So there's quite a broad, impact in just that work. So that's been quite exciting. Then, obviously, over that time as well, I've also released 3 international bestsellers. Now, the crazy thing that happens when you do an Amazon book is that you have people that buy your book in ways and places you wouldn't even imagine. So our books have actually been sold in over 83 countries. And I've got a full list, I think, on the website, but it's just amazing. I didn't know anyone in Tanzania, for example, and I had no idea of who was going to do any work with us in Egypt, for example. Or, we've got clients that are across the Middle East or in different parts of Europe that I've never been to. So that's the nature of the internet. That's the nature of the world that we live in. So we've sort of had sort of seeds in the ground in a lot of these different areas, and we've done, big events, across Australia and New Zealand, across Southeast Asia, throughout the United States, and then, of course, quite extensively throughout Europe. So we've already done a bit of stuff, but we never really built a territory or a marketplace in those. It would be more fly in, do an event, then come back, and Australia's always been our home base. And part of that was, when you look at your business model, for us, our business model was that we used to run front-end events, like intro evenings. From there, we would deliver a great experience, and then we'd make an offer to come and join us for a 3-day live event. Now, when you go to a city, let's say, for example, I travel to Budapest, and I haven't been to Budapest, but let's say I had. Fly to Budapest, run an intro event, sell an event, a 3-day event. Now I've got to go back to Budapest to do that 3-day event. Or that client's going to have to fly to like a hub, maybe, for example, London, to do the event as well. Well, it just creates friction. And so if people see you in that city, they expect you to come to that city and do that event. Or at least that was my mindset. So we were always limited in scaling our impact because our business model was predicated on the idea of running a live event. And so, yeah, you could run a live event anywhere in the world, technically, but to make it all work worthwhile, and the team and the money and the events and the costs and the flights and accommodation and all that stuff, you really want to make a commitment to a territory. And so it was very much the case of, we have so much opportunity, not enough time, not enough money to do it. That was all pre-COVID. COVID happens, and at that point, we are scheduled to run events in Australia and New Zealand, a couple of cities in both. We've got clients predominantly in Australia and New Zealand, but we just come back from a big tour in the United States. And we had a couple of clients scattered in other places, but predominantly it was Australia and New Zealand. When COVID happened, we can't run events. So now we take everything digitally. And in that process, when we started to do that, we naturally started to attract more of the clients that had seen our work outside of those areas because we were obviously being able to run events that were virtual events as opposed to physical events. And so that really took off for us. So fast forward a couple of months, Australia and New Zealand is going gangbusters. And after a while, we've seen quite a few people in the marketplace start to copy our ideas, copy our marketing, and so the marketplace becomes a little bit more competitive. So as a result of that, we thought, okay, great, well, we've got an opportunity, we've got a really good thing happening here. Let's take that and let's start to share that and just test the waters globally. And if we don't have to think locally anymore, let's do that. So we expanded to Malaysia and Singapore, and we also expanded to the United States. And if you ask most companies, so if you go to a Fortune 500 company, you say, hey, how much does it cost you to launch a new market, and how long does it take before that new market's profitable? It's normally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and it's normally years before those markets are profitable. We launch new markets within a 24-hour period. Within a week, we're in profitability. So that's really exciting because it means we can take the business anywhere. Now, again, you have another challenge now, which is salespeople and finding people in different territories to do that, and obviously currency and timing and all of the stuff that goes into that, which I'm sure we'll go through in other questions. But I forgot what your original question was. Now I've been rambling on, Jade. But why did you do it? Part of it was just because it's my nature, my DNA. The other part of it was we saw the opportunity to expand our impact. Another part of it was that the market in Australia and New Zealand is becoming increasingly competitive as people copy our shit. So, we had probably a good 7-month head start on everybody, but now it's pretty easy to find what people are doing for marketing. And some people are blatant. Like, some people are legitimately marketing this same thing that we are. And they've even just copied word for word our stuff. Short of signing off from me, it's the same thing. So you adapt to the market, you find a way of adding more value. If you can, why not?
What does running a global business look like day to day in terms of a routine or a structure?
Yeah, it's a clusterfuck. And it really depends on where your global business is. So for us, we're in Perth. So just to give you an idea, we're in Perth, which is Greenwich Mean Time +8. And we've got a team in Perth. We've also got a team that is in Melbourne that are in lockdown. They're 3 hours ahead of us. We've got a team in Tasmania, also 3 hours ahead. We've got a team in Auckland, 5 hours ahead. And just at the start of this week, we also had a team in New York City. We also had a team as well in the Midwest of the United States. So they're effectively, if New York City is 12 hours or 13 hours behind us, the Midwest is 15 hours behind us. We also had people in California who were 17 hours behind us. Then at the same time as well, we also had people in England who are 7 hours behind us. So you're working across literally the entire world at that point. So it's very difficult. It's very complex. There's a lot of nuance. So, when I was running every aspect of the team, and up until the start of this week, we had 17 people in our team. We've just scaled everything back because of this challenge, which was my day would normally start in the morning. I'd get up, would go and do the gym at approximately about 6 a.m. I'd start and do my training calls with the team that are in the United States, have those calls, do all the meetings and conversations with them. If I missed anybody, I would have the calls and the meetings with them at 8 p.m. Perth time. So effectively, my day would run from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. And then I'd get into the office. I'd do my team huddles with the Australian team. So we would normally do check-ins at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We'd do our day here in Australia. And obviously, by the time we do a 9 o'clock check-in for Australia, it's lunchtime in Melbourne and it's already 2 p.m. in Auckland. So you've already lost the day at that point. It's almost like end of day. And then you've got people signing off and giving you ideas before you're ready to go to bed. But then when you're up and you're giving them ideas, it's when they're asleep. People processing currencies in 4 or 5 different currencies at different times, different systems. As well, another challenge. This is just something stupid. When you try to process credit cards in the United States, if a lot of clients have got it as an auto reject if there's an overseas transaction. So, for a lot of our American clients, then they have to call and contact their bank when they want to buy something from us. It's extra friction. It's just really difficult. So there's a lot of complexity in that. It's complex when you're running any team. Even if you were to try and run a team of 17 people in one city and they all were in one office, it'd be hard. But when you're running it across effectively, 5 or 6 different cities and probably close to 5 to 10 time zones, it was a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It still is a nightmare now, even with 3 or 4. So, It's difficult. It's a long day. You're trying to do the best you can to try and support your team, especially because a lot of our team are not established team members. So these are team members that are just starting with us, that have only done maybe a month. So you want to try and pour your time and energy and attention and love into them to get them trained up and upskilled. And then it gets too much. You put on board managers to try and do that, but then the managers need management training, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So if you're someone like me, which I love being on all the time, I love the work that comes with all of that as well. I thrive with that environment. I also really love having a big team. Then I really enjoy all of it. But if you're not, then it is not a good place to be. Even managing one time zone would be difficult for most people. Just try to manage people in your own city would be a good starting point.
Aside from obviously the different time zones and currencies, are there any other challenges you want to mention?
Yeah, I think just cultural differences, right? Like, so I'll give you an example. When we first started, we were doing we were doing Malaysia, Singapore, and the United States. And, just little things, right? Like, you take for granted that in Australia, if you want to call somebody, pick up the phone and give them a call. But, there's difficulties in getting numbers in those cities. And when you then call people as well, particularly for a lot of our Asian clients, they don't want to speak to somebody on their mobile phone because if it's an overseas number, they get charged for it. So they want to be spoken to on WhatsApp instead. So you're doing a lot more work on WhatsApp as opposed to the phone number, right? Same for clients in the United States. Then, when you're speaking to a client in Singapore and you're selling them a product, let's say it's $500 USD, for example, for someone in Singapore, that's not a lot of money. But if you're speaking to a client in Malaysia and it's $500 USD, that's a huge amount of money. Like, there's a massive divide economically between Singapore and Malaysia. Even though they're probably only 30 minutes away in time, they're, massive, like apples and oranges financially. So that's also something that's nuanced. In the United States, there's a huge percentage of the populace that don't make any money at all, like really, really struggling. So you've really got to work on refining your messaging and marketing, because what works in one geographical area is not going to work on every geographical area. It's not as simple as just scaling. You've got to really do better work of understanding that market to be able to meet the market where it's at. So there's a lot in that as well. And I think a lot of people have these sort of ideas of grandeur of going, well, I want to have a global business. Well, do you really want to have clients in multiple current countries? Do you really want to have the challenge of responding to emails at all different times of the day and night? If you could make the same money and they all be in your local city, would that not be better for you and get rid of the ego of it? Then most people probably would say yes.
What are some things you enjoy about running a global business?
Well, I like the fact that it's global. I like the fact that we get to touch people's lives in all sorts of different countries. What's crazy about it as well is you start in some markets and then things just happen organically. So, for example, we weren't doing a lot of stuff in England because we're focused on the United States. And then we had some clients that had actually purchased programs in Australia that had referred us to their family in the UK, and then the UK had bought. It's like, great. Well, what's awesome about it is it really does encourage you to think about things in a much bigger way than what you would if you were thinking about it locally. And there's much opportunities in Australia. What's incredible is, here in Australia, we've got about 24 million people. In the United States, they've got 350 million. In England, I think they've got close to 100 million or certainly like 80 million. I think there's I don't know how, I think it's like 8 million people in the greater London area. So the opportunity is just unbelievable. That's really exciting. That's number one. Number two, is it's also great as well to have what's known as geo arbitrage from a currency perspective. So making dollars in USD right now is really great if you're in Australia. So that's also been a win. And what I also like about it as well is that we're now building an even more recession-proof business. So, if shit hits the fan in Australia, well, it's okay because we don't rely on Australia. We've got New Zealand that will prop us up. We've got Singapore that will prop us up. We've got the Americas. We've got the European Union. We've got the UK. So we've got 5 or 6 different territories that we can turn on, turn off at any moment. Not to mention all the other ones I've got on the list that we haven't even explored yet. So it's exciting because we've got huge opportunity. And by actually pursuing those opportunities, we actually create a more stable and more a secure business model, providing that we can maintain quality controls, obviously, and that we've got a great customer experience. So there's some things that really excite me about it. And I do like the idea of being able to connect with people in different currencies and know that our business is working 24/7, 365. There's something that's really exciting about that for me.
Beautiful. What advice would you give someone that's about to expand their business globally?
Well, first, I would consider before you expand, I would really encourage you first, before you look at scalability, I would really look to optimize first, This is really important. So I find that a lot of people scale just because they think it's the easy, obvious answer. So for example, I'm doing okay now, but if I just turn on a whole nother country, it'll get better. It's like, well, most of the time, you've got low-hanging fruit in your current market that you could get better at now before you look at expanding. And so often, adding a whole nother country or a whole nother territory into your business is not the answer. We've only really gone global recently, in a true sense of the word. Before that, it was just sort of people that were on the sidelines, so to speak, engaging with us. But now we're really global. But my encouragement would be, first and foremost, just make sure you've got your product, your service really solid. You're maximizing your opportunities domestically, wherever that means. And that might be domestically as in just your city or your state, but it could also be your nation as well. So, just make the most of what you've got right now and get that rock solid. Then look to scale internationally once you're really sure you've got your model in play first. So once you've done that, that's great. Then see if you can try and find, a promotional partner in a new territory. See if you could try and find some people that are of a like-to-like combination. So one of the things that I was concerned about when we were launching our programs was that obviously Australia and New Zealand is such an easy combination. And you then go, okay, cool, the United States and England would be easy combinations. Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Japan, Indonesia, they're more difficult because they're not traditionally Western cities. They're more Eastern cities. You've got more of an Asian market there as well. There's more of a language barrier. We're still doing great work. We're still making a heap of money, changing a heap of lives. But just keep that in mind. That does add a little bit more friction to the process. We've got where's Mary originally from? The Philippines. We've got a Filipino in our team, and we've also got Alex is originally from Hong Kong. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So we've got some Asian people in our team, which really does help to build that rapport. But if you don't have that, you might want to consider that as well.
Are there any key lessons or takeaways so far, or anything you might do differently moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So we just made some changes this week. We spoke to one of our mentors, and he had made the suggestion for us to sort of lean things back a little bit. And the reference point that Dan gave us, which I quite like, is he said to own a time zone before you own the world. And I like that concept and idea. So, we originally had focused just on Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, but Dan had brought up, well, hold on, Japan, very high net worth community and culture. You could do some great stuff there. Hong Kong as well. And then also potentially looking at Indonesia as well. So we decided we're not going to move ahead with Indonesia anymore, but there's some markets there that we can explore. So there's more opportunity domestically or even in Australia Pacific than we had considered. And, there's, if you consider like even India, billion people. Now, there's a huge divide between the haves and haves not in India, but if you took the top 5%, they have obscene levels of wealth in India. That's still 50 million people. That's a huge amount of people. It's more than double the population of Australia, and that's the top 5% of India. So there's a lot of opportunities as part of that, not to mention China if we were to get into that market, or even South Korea, for example. So I'm not sure how we'd go in North Korea. We'll see. But we'll just start with South Korea.
You like a challenge.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a couple of different points there, but I would say start and expand geographically within your natural trade route effectively, right? Start there because it's easier to manage because the time zone's just easier. It's going to make your life easier. That's number one. Number two is what I would also do as well is understand what are the critical parts of the process that you have special competence in that you have to do in-house, and what parts can you outsource or delegate. So one of the things that we tried to do in the beginning was effectively get salespeople in each of those cities. Now that's all good, but when you're then trying to train those people to get them up to speed, it takes a lot of energy because they're in all those different territories. What we could have done, though, is just get people doing appointment setting in those markets, which is very easy to do. We're very good at doing that. And then we could have done our sales domestically and getting somebody in Australia to do the sales for us. Well, we already have an established sales team. That would have been a smarter strategy in the short term. That would have been better. Also, when we look to expand in the future, we'll probably bring on board country managers. They'll actually just manage and build a team themselves in those countries. But the big reason why we probably scale back a little bit as well is Ash and I are looking to have a baby at the moment, and we're not pregnant yet, but we're trying for that. So, the point was raised, look, when you have a child, do you really want to be running a global business with 17 to 40 staff in 5 or 6 countries? Or do you want to have a more of a low-key, less stressful approach, less complex approach, and instead just focus on making like maybe a little bit less money, but more profitable and far less stress? And so I was like, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to focus on Australia Pacific. We're also going to do a little bit of work in the UK and Ireland because it's a natural time zone distinction for us. It's much easier in our afternoons to work with the UK than it is the US. So we'll do a bit of that, and we'll just focus on those markets, and we'll probably do a little bit of stuff in the Middle East as well.
Where do you see your business in 3 years' time?
3 years' time is an interesting one. So I would definitely say even more global than we are now. And I would imagine within 3 years' time, we'll probably have a bigger team than we have now as well. By that point, we'll certainly have 1, but maybe even 2 kids. So I see us being in a position where we've got a general manager on board that's effectively running the business, or even an MD that's running the business for us. I imagine as well that we'll have some really great quality assets. We're working on our book at the moment as well, so I think that'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. But I would say we'll definitely be global. We'll be continuing to do the work that we're doing right now, but I think we'll have really at that point matured into a tremendous online training, learning organization, doing some great stuff. I think if you were to look at where Mindvalley's at the moment, if we can emulate some of the stuff that they've been able to do, I think that's a good model for us to chase. We were doing more of the Tony Robbins model originally. I think we'll move more into a Mindvalley model as we move forward from there.
Cool. Any final comments or a wrap up for, I suppose, any changes you've experienced, especially with COVID and stuff, and how that's impacted the global sort of thing? Yeah,
so COVID's affected every market differently, right? Like obviously if you're in Melbourne right now, it's a very different mindset than being in Perth. But nonetheless, it is what it is. As a business, I think what's really important is, do you have an exit strategy, right? Not just to sell your business, but I mean, if your core market or your core demographic dies, can you reinvent yourself? And for us, we went in March from having one product that made the majority of our sales to that product disappearing effectively. We haven't been able to run that product at all this year, other than this weekend coming up. And we normally would run it 6 times. So we've effectively completely replaced our income source. We went from one product to a whole nother product, and we've doubled our income and 5x'd our profits. So we've been able to do that. Now, if we had to do it again, I know that we could do something similar. Maybe not as good, but we could do something similar. You got to do the same thing as well. So part of that strategy might be looking at other frontiers. One of the things that's important to know is that in Australia and New Zealand, it's far more expensive for marketing and lead generation than it is in Europe or the United Kingdom or the US or even Southeast Asia. It's quite an expensive market here. So when you're playing on that arbitrage, well, one, they'll say, hold on a second, it costs me less money in the US to make more money. Well, why would I not just do more there? So I think that's an important mindset to have if you've got to think globally. But in order to do that, your business has got to be ready for global expansion. A lot of people are not. So prep for that, get ready for that, understand your systems and processes. If you can't scale every aspect of the delivery process, then you're really not ready to do it. So I would say get that right first, because otherwise you're just going to create yourself a whole clusterfuck full of headaches.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Where can everybody listening or watching, wherever you're tuning in, where can they find you? Yeah,
obviously check us out on the gram at Calvin Coils. Also on the book on Facebook as well at Calvin Coils and at Calvin Coils Official. Our YouTube channel is normally a good place to go as well, which is at Calvin Coils on YouTube. And we've got our podcast, obviously, which they'll be watching and listening to. And then, if there's anything that you need or any help that you want, email me, calvin@wildsuccess.global. I'm more than happy to help and give you some love and support you in your journey. It's a very exciting process of taking your business global. And you really want to make sure you've got some great advice and mentorship around that process, as we've had for us as well. So anything I can do to help, just let me know.